Welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. My name is John Sanders. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and really excited to introduce you to today's guest for this episode. He's been a friend of mine for a while. His name is John Michael Clark, and not only does he serve as a church planter and a pastor, but he also has an awesome business. I would contend it's just as much a ministry as it is a business, called The Family Captain, where he really helps men level up as Christ-following husbands, and is doing an incredible work. He's helped bring some significant transformation in the lives of not only men, but ultimately their marriages and their families. And he's making an incredible living doing this. And it's a great example of what we would call the information-based pathway, where you have a core message and then you build a stream of revenue around that message by serving people in various platforms. And John Michael has done exactly that, and in this episode, he's going to not only tell us what the Family Captain is all about, but we're going to talk some of the nuts and bolts of his business, and he's going to share a little bit of how he went from starting it to the success that he's experiencing in it today. So I know you're going to be blessed by this conversation, so without any further ado, check out our conversation with John Michael Clark. Here we go. Well, John Michael, it is my privilege to have you on the Entree Pastors Podcast. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, guys. Good to be with you.
Yeah, you and I have known each other for a while, and as a result, I've introduced you to Les a while back as well. So you've kind of been in our world for a little while now. But for those of you who don't know John Michael, give us a little bit of an introduction to your life. Tell us about who you are, where you are, and we'll start unpacking your story.
Yeah, so there I was.
There he was.
Being born to Barry and Denise Clark in 1984. And skip ahead a little bit. So I'm
at least 30... he didn't, John, at least he didn't say in the beginning.
Yeah,
in
right.
the beginning, there I was.
That's going a little too far back.
Yeah. So my great-grandfather, my grandfather was a Methodist pastor. My dad was an Assemblies of God pastor. And I've had the privilege of being in the ministry for years as well. I've been married to Natalie, my dream girl, now for 15 years. We've got 3 boys, Elijah, Brock, and Hudson. They're 14, 12, and 8. I'm the pastor to Salt Church that we planted 2 years ago. And then I am the owner of a coaching practice called the Family Captain. So I was in ministry for, Natalie and I had been married. We got married at like 22. We'd been married only a few months when our pastor at our church back in the day asked me to come on staff as the youth pastor. That role changed into one of the staff pastors there at the church. I was there for 8 years. And the Lord led me out of there. I knew that I was going to be doing some secular work, but I still knew I was in the ministry, and knew that I would be officially pastoring again. So it was years, though, that went by, and just doing my best to follow the leading of the Holy Spirit until finally got the green light to plant Salt Church. And right around the same time, I was starting the Family Captain. And so I do the Family Captain full time. And so I'm bivocational as I lead the church.
Yeah, very good. If you don't mind me asking, tell the story when you stepped away from your ministry role as a staff pastor. And if you don't want to get into any specifics, you don't have to, but I'd just be curious to hear, like, what was that transition about? And the reason I asked John Michael is because many in our audience are at a point in their pastoral journey where they're kind of frustrated, like something needs to change, whether that's I need more income, or I don't know if this pastoring gig is for me anymore, or maybe I feel like the way I've been doing it is not effective and I need to figure out something else. So I just like hearing people's stories of, how did God work in your life to bring that about, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah. Well, I was really immature, and when I specifically, I was naive in thinking that I didn't recognize the division that was present. And I know that's typically used as a strong word, like church split kind of stuff. That wasn't the heart of it at all. The lead pastor at this church, I loved him and still love him dearly. He loved me and loves me dearly. But I didn't realize it at the time. Looking back now, hindsight, I've got 2020, but at the time, looking back now, I can realize I was just changing and developing different from what the vision in his heart for that house was.
Mhm.
And for a long time, I just didn't see that. I just kept trying to bring my gifts as best I knew how. And if I was talking to John Michael, if I was talking to, whatever, 25-year-old John Michael right now, I'd be like, buddy, it's just time to head on out, man. Like, all is well, everything's okay. This is just growth and change. And, for whatever reason, I'm glossing over it a bit here, but
Sure.
that was the gist of it. There was no issue really, that nothing ever came to a head, but it was just this more and more a heart sickness inside of me for some particular things, a particular approach to ministry. There was a way I saw ministry should be done well. There were ways that I thought ministry shouldn't be done. And we're not talking about issues of ethics. We're just talking about approach to scripture and what should that really look like. So godly, holy people at that church who I love and respect and learned a lot from, but I was going a different direction. So it took me a long time to recognize that. Just go, dude, you don't fit here anymore. And
Yeah.
that's okay. And there's probably a million reasons that I stayed longer than I should have, but a lot of it just came down to I was just clueless. I just thought, man, like, I'm going to be faithful. Like, if you can't be faithful where you're at, then you're never going to be anywhere else. And all kinds of things, that truisms that kind of kept me stuck in a situation where I really needed some wise counsel. Man, I needed a mentor. I needed an older brother in the Lord to just look in on it and go, dude, this is not that complicated.
Yeah.
I can help you and I can encourage you. So as the heart sickness grew, my hunger for what the Lord was saying, I think, grew. And that was where I finally, apart from any counsel, finally had enough confidence to say, the Lord is officially sending me out and releasing me from this season. So I did it the long, slow way. I would encourage anybody who's got that kind of frustration like right now, man, get somebody in your corner, get some wise, godly perspective, ask some other guys, ask some other men, ask some other seasoned believers. Hey, here's my situation. Am I crazy? Am I wrong? Am I rebellious? Am I impatient? Somebody might say, heck yeah, you are. Like, you hop jobs every 3 months, and maybe you need to hear that. Or maybe they're gonna be like, no, dude, not at all. Like, this is just obvious that you need to make a move, and you need to see the writing on the wall. So that's what that looked like. I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah, no, it's really good. And one thing I think that is a very common trap in pastoral ministry, and it affects, again, so many of the themes we serve our audience with here, and that's, we give so much meaning to the seasons of ministry that we're in, and so then if those seasons change, and seasons do change, and if it is time for a move, I see pastors really struggling with that because they put so much heaviness around the sense of calling, which is a very real thing. I feel called to this, and yeah, so I appreciate you just sharing kind of your heart on that.
can I add something to that?
Yeah.
So this is another thing that ties into that story. Is earlier in that season at that church, I burned out my wife in ministry, and to a degree burned out myself. Thank God our story didn't end in any kind of crisis. But it was a depletion of my wife, and somewhat a depletion of me. It's the closest I've ever come to depression, which I still think was very mild compared to what I know others have had come against them. But mine was entirely self-inflicted, and it was always justifying the work of the ministry. It's the ministry. It's for the kingdom of God. And when you've got that approach, Bubba, you guys know, you can always justify the Bible study, the hospital visit, filling up the calendar, all the things, because it truly is meaningful work. The problem in my case was John Michael wasn't even qualified for all that work because he wasn't managing his own household well. And I've unfortunately found that to be a very common thing among us pastors. So by the time I was at the end, I also had detached, John, from what you're describing. Like early on, if somebody had been like, I think you need to leave, and be like, what? This is my identity. I am a pastor. It is who I am to a degree. Yeah, but also no, in that, who am I? Well, I'm Christ's. I belong to him. And of course, we know this on paper. We would all get an A+ if we were taking that test on paper. But to actually embody it and to be able to live it out with revelation, like, who are you? I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a business owner, I'm a pastor, I'm a this, I'm a that. What if you took away all that? I don't know who I am. Okay, brother, then you should run to the cross and be refreshed in the revelation of the love of the Father, because all these things could hypothetically vanish, immediately. So
Yeah.
thankfully I had that freedom at that point. I really was secure. I didn't care that anybody thought, because everybody was like, you're leaving the ministry. You're leaving the ministry, which, number one, if I was, so what? Because I'm not the ministry, and Jesus is building his church, and the church is going to be okay. But I didn't have I don't care about the church attitude. That wasn't it at all. But I also was recognizing it doesn't matter. I'm not doing this for anybody else. I see the Lord making a move here, and I didn't have all the answers. I put in my resignation there without knowing where I was going. And I don't recommend that unless the Holy Spirit leads you to do that. But that freedom I had, man, that's powerful. You've got options. It's not just a pros and cons list. It's I really am secure in Christ. And now that opens up, the world becomes your oyster because the Holy Spirit is directing you.
Yeah, that's really good. I was going to ask you, that was going to be one of the next things I directed you to, is that part of your story where you burned out in ministry, and really where you sensed it probably first in your wife, as you saw Natalie struggling with that. So I appreciate you sharing that story. Again, these are such relevant themes to pretty much everyone in our audience, if they've been in pastoral ministry or just even in church staff ministry for any length of time.
Yeah.
Like, we get this stuff, we feel this stuff.
Right.
So you then moved into, well, by the way, back up. This is a little bit more of a foundational question. Where in the country are you, John Michael? Where do you live?
We're in Virginia. We're a small town on the Chesapeake Bay.
Did you grow up, born and raised in that area?
Yeah. We've been here for most of the time. My family was in Florida for a couple years. I lived in Boston for a minute, in North Carolina, but Natalie and I have mostly been right here for most of our lives.
Yeah. And also, fun fact about John Michael, you had kind of a sports experience that a lot of people don't, probably because it's not a common sport like baseball or football. Tell us a little bit about the extracurricular that you were very, not only involved in, but very successful in growing up. Because I think it sort of ties into your family captain theme as far as the nautical stuff goes. But tell us about that real quick.
Yeah, that it dovetailed well. So I was the skinny kid in high school. So what are skinny kids good for? Like cross country. Well, I did not think running was awesome. Just run and
no
don't
one's ever
stop running.
smiling when they're running. You never see a smile on their face.
Yeah, so I wasn't super interested in that. But one of the kids one day was like, "Hey, have you heard of crew?" And I said, "No." He said, "You should come to practice." So I went to crew practice. So I was the coxswain. I was the guy who steers and yells and motivates and gets to enjoy the ride while the horses do all the work. But it turns out I was good at it and got to enjoy a lot of success because I got to be in a lot of boats with a lot of fast rowers. But I was really good at my craft for what it was worth in the time and season. And that was a gift that the Lord gave to me. The gift itself of being able to do that job well, but then also I could have kept chasing it. I could have kept pursuing it. I could have pursued Olympics and all these other things, but I sensed the Lord was calling me to set it aside. So I did. And that was just another beautiful story of the kindness of the Lord, where an opportunity came out of nowhere. I don't know. Are we recording the video for a YouTube or anything? Or
yeah, the video is being recorded. So
this medal, this came after I had set everything aside. I said, I'm done. It was a wonderful season. I was probably one of the best in the world, but I guess we'll really never know. And whatever, who cares? Do things that matter, Jon Michael. Well, the Lord, through a wonderful series of events, brought me right back into this thing. It was the right time. It was the right season. I sought him diligently, said, Lord, I don't want to do anything that you don't want me to do. And he guided me in his word to Jeremiah 1:9. And I don't advertise this often, but here on a pastor's podcast, I feel safe to do so. Well, on one hand, I feel safe to do so because I know everybody's got discernment and maturity. On the other hand, some people are going to put me on blast for what I'm about to say, but I can handle it. I had prayed. I said, Lord, if you want me to do this, you're going to have to put your words in my mouth, because I was being called up to an elite level and to go race with Olympians and Ivy League guys, and they wanted to put together a boat to go win worlds in Japan. And I said, Lord, if you want me to do this, you got to put your words in my mouth. And I hadn't intended to do so, but I had opened my Bible, and the next verse I read was, see, I'm putting my words in your mouth.
Wow. So
that's the only time I ever had a pray and then the literal word kind of thing happen. I never prescribed to go searching for that. But so it was a wonderful, wonderful joy, a super fun season. But then I was 21 and I was done with that, and then moved back to Virginia. And back into work and then marrying Natalie and ministry and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So when you leave pastoral ministry then, or at least you're on staff at the church and you make your exit there, what's the next step then? You start working kind of in what we call the secular world, which we don't fully embrace that idea. We know what people mean when they say that, but we don't really embrace that,
Right.
that divide of sacred and secular. But again, I know what you mean. So using that understanding, was that the next step on the journey then?
Exactly. Yeah, I was praying about it, just kind of sampling and testing things. I'm like, I know I need to work. If I don't work, I shouldn't eat. I need to provide for my family, but what's it going to be? What's it going to look like? So ended up at a fire department, that was a testimony, a long story in itself. Got injured in that fire academy. And this will tie into where we are today. Got injured in the fire academy and got fired. Natalie hates it when I tell people I got fired. She's like, you didn't get fired, you got laid off. I'm like, I don't care. They said you don't have a job anymore. She's like, but it makes it sound like you did something wrong.
I'm with Natalie on that. That's not getting fired, but go ahead. It's your story. You can tell it.
They were savage, man. They were savage. They were like, your knee doesn't work anymore. I'm like, yes, I know. Can I just cycle back around? They're like, yeah, sure, you can reapply. So anyway, I got laid off, fired. And at that point, it really just became, I had to struggle to make the math work for the family. That was it. It was jobs here, jobs there. It was a desert season. 2016 sucked. I mean, everything. It was a country song, man. Our dog got hit by a car.
Oh man.
The injury, the layoff, the washing machine, like the truck, like all the things were going down. And working wherever I can work and getting whatever I can to make happen. So I think I'm really gifted in a lot of ways, but I don't look good on paper. So I'm not the guy who's going to submit his resume somewhere and they're going to be like, wow, ta-da. And I didn't have a network. I hadn't built that in my ignorance and immaturity. I didn't know to do that over the years. So I was just very much in the silo of the church that I was in. So
how old are you at that point, John Michael?
2016, I'm 39 now. So somebody do some math.
Oh man, don't put me on the spot like that. You're still young.
32.
I was a young man.
Yeah.
I guess.
Oh.
I don't know. But so 4 years, 6,
32.
7, 8 years. That was 8 years ago. So I was 31. Yeah, something like that. So that was when I was also the thing I've left out is during this whole stuff, the church stuff and all of it, I have this thing stirring in my marriage. And should I tie that in, John? And
yeah, go ahead, because it's going to lead to when I
yeah, because this was all
family
happening at the same time. Obviously, we don't have all these little pockets of life necessarily. So during this, like Natalie and I, we're happily married. I love my wife. I like my wife. She's my favorite person. And we're good. And our marriage was better than any other marriage that I knew of. And still, I had this thing stirring in me where I knew that we weren't walking in God's best. And I knew it came down to these issues of headship and submission. I'm kind of lumping that into one thing. And then the other one had to do with sex and marriage. And I didn't know what the answers were, but I just knew that there was better and there was higher and that there was more. And that's kind of how it started for me. So it started as like a typical young marriage frustration, when it came to our sexual life together, like frequency and freedom and things not necessarily being what they could be there. And then when it came to headship and submission, there's all the questions and confusion of like, your wife's supposed to submit to what? What the heck does that really look like? Well, don't be a jerk. All the mixed signals and confusing messaging. I'm like, I don't want to be a jerk. And I don't want us to, have a sex life that looks anything like the world. But man, the church has got to get better at answering these questions and bringing clarity and help to marriages. Christians should have the best marriages. Christians should have the best sex lives. Our God invented marriage. This is our jurisdiction. We need to own this thing, and it ought to be awesome. Christian households should be way, way, way different from worldly households. So this is like a long-term 5-6 year journey that was happening in the middle of all this, where I'm growing and trying to get answers and trying to get clarity. A million books, a million podcasts, a million resources. And the Lord starts building in me a piece here and a piece there. And I go, ooh, I had to sift through a lot of septic tanks to find one little diamond. And I'm going, okay, that's a keeper. And because of course I wasn't afraid. All truth is God's truth.
Oh.
So what started happening was I started to see in the scripture what I had never seen in the scripture. Oh my goodness, it was there the whole time. Wow, there it is. there it is. How did I not see it? But I got a piece here and a piece here and a piece here, and then I'm filtering everything through the word. So as I'm applying the things that I'm learning, as I'm starting to level up and really grow, Natalie and I start getting into what I describe only as ecstatically married. Where do you go from happily married? Well, to ecstatically married, where I am the man, she is the woman. I am leading, she is my wife who is helping. Everybody's thriving. We have a win-win scenario. Our children are being well cared for. Our intimate life, as we call it in Christian circles, our intimate life is, there's the frequency, there's the freedom, there's the joy. And I'm just going, praise God, this is heaven on earth. This is, the Lord did it. And it was one step at a time we got there. Well, at the same time, as I'm coming to our happily ever after, I'm also recognizing, dude, I'm not the only dude who needs help with this.
Yeah.
And that's where, of course, the rest is history. And I'm going to help my brothers. I can teach this. I can make it so everybody doesn't have to go on the long journey. I can make things clear. I can make things concise. I can make things helpful and beautiful and biblical so that the saints can be helped and we can go from there. So that was 2018 when I first launched, because I didn't know anything about anything, didn't know about the online world. I just knew I could make like an email course and I could put some stuff together. And so that was when I launched what at that time was called the Captain's Course. And then I ended up tabling that, had a work opportunity that came up, a wonderful testimony there, but it took us to West Virginia for a bit. And I put everything on pause, unfortunately, when it came to the family leadership stuff. Well, when we came back to Virginia after Rona and lockdowns, and that was a great opportunity for us to move back home. That's when I saw I was about to get fired, or as Natalie would like to put it, laid off again from that particular role. And I said, man, it's time to quit dabbling with the family leadership thing. This is a part of my calling. This is an obvious need in the body of Christ. Needs to be a part of my life's work. And I'm passionate and good at it. So I got laid off December 28th, 3 days after Christmas. That's when the audience goes, oh, right. And then
It's always around Christmas.
yeah, it's perfect timing.
Yeah,
those
always.
guys, those employers, they want you to have a cooler story. They want your testimony to be better.
There you go.
They want to add drama.
Thoughtful of them.
So it was in that moment, I'm like, okay, what are you going to do, John Michael? Like, what are you really going to do? What are the options here? Go put together a crummy resume and send it out and hopefully go make $40,000. Well, that doesn't even fund the Clark household. So that's the responsible man thing to do. So I'm told, because you got to work, you got to go do something. But how is that responsible? How is that manly? It's not providing for a future. It's not living into your calling. Of course, for me, that felt like more of the risk than just betting on me and betting on what the Lord had done in me, walking by faith and saying, I'm all in, both feet. We're going into it's family captain time. And that was 2020, 2021.
Early 2021.
Yeah, that was so January 2021. I was, like it or not, full-time family captain and saying, I'm about to build this thing. I'm about to make this thing work.
So it was about that time, maybe a little before, I think you and I connected in the fall for the first time. I think we connected in the fall of 2020. So if I recall from one of our first conversations, you were still employed, but you weren't loving the job and you saw kind of the end on the horizon, and you were really looking at building a business of your own. And so it was in that vein that you and I had a conversation of what does that look like? I was in the middle of a, ministry season transition of my own right at that time, maybe just a few steps ahead of you in that I had already stepped out of that lead pastor role. But again, wrestling with a lot of those same thoughts in my head of, well, who am I if I'm not a pastor, if I don't have a sermon to preach every 7 days and all of those things. And so anyway, you and I had a conversation around that, and it's been interesting and very encouraging, man, just to see at a distance, to watch you develop this business and get it up and off the ground. I think the way I want to approach this part of the conversation is you've already kind of mentioned some of the high points of the family captain, but maybe just go a little deeper into that as far as how did you end up packaging this? Because, well, let me back up and I'll set the stage with this. You would fit into here at Entre Pastors what we call the information-based pathway, where you have a message, kind of a core message, something that you're passionate about, you feel some giftedness around, and you figure out a way to monetize that. And there's a lot of different ways of doing that, but you can package that message through courses and books and podcasts and YouTube channels and, live events and all different things, coaching. And so you basically package that message, and now you are and have been building a pretty successful business around that. So maybe just give us kind of if you had to give the elevator speech of what is the family captain,
Okay.
to somebody who's your client, and then, how did you end up packaging that message?
Hey,
Yeah.
John Michael, before you do that, let me insert one thing here. And that is that, I don't think that you can speak to this, but there are some things that you can do, some habits that you can begin, but you can't really control the way that other people respond, as far as on the need end. So it just, from our experience, you've been able to build something pretty significant, relatively speaking, fairly quickly. All right. That just comes from a lot of conversations that we've had and people that we've spoken with and people that we've watched. And we're very careful when we come alongside of someone and try to speak into them and what it would take to build what they want to build. We're very careful not to make promises that, seem almost too good to be true, or that we can't help them fulfill. And one of the pushbacks that we often get is timing, meaning we let people know that what they want, if they're looking at a coaching or a content-based business or something in that realm, if they'll get after it, it doesn't take as long as some might think that it does. And I know that you've got some goals and some probably pretty big dreams out there that haven't been fulfilled yet. That's a good thing. But what I wanted our listeners to understand is that for those people that say, man, that can't be done in that amount of time, or they think that this is a 5 to 10 year, pilgrimage, you can find success in a shorter time than that. I wanted to point that out when you began, because the timeline, I think, is pretty interesting.
Absolutely. That's a great point. So I'll speak to that first, Les, and then I'll come back to your thing, John. Absolutely. And I think the best thing those of you can do, if you feel like, man, I'm so sick, here we go, some other dude, another success story. Man, all I can encourage you with is surround yourself with more people who are doing the things that you want to be doing, because it makes all the difference. I don't know who's famous for the quote, but you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time around.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always found it to be true of me. And I challenge you to assess yourself right now. If you were to take your 5 biggest influences into your life right now, whether or not they're even flesh and blood, it might be podcast or book or some online resource. It might be Jon and Les. But if you put the top 5 people who you have the most time and influence from and shake them up, I bet you're what gets spit out. And I always find it to be the case for me. Natalie's always number 1. And then I'm thinking, like, right now it is Jon for sure, because I'm working with John's coaching me. And I'm just thinking through different possibilities and different scenarios and different people who are working with me. You shake that up. Yep. Current Jon Michael gets spit out. Well, I don't like that very much. Okay. You don't have to kill anybody and get rid of them. But you need to be able to level up. So if things feel impossible, if things feel difficult, I submit to you, brothers, sisters, that is very likely just the influence that you're used to. Like, people just can't make that much money.
Yeah,
People just can't do this, that. You just can't do that. Like, I feel you. I know that's the temptation, but there's a whole other world of people who think differently and who will encourage you and challenge you. Next thing you know, you can find yourself doing really special things. Now, of course, I had the added advantage of pressure. I find that I work well with pressure. You promised me a trip to Maui, and I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool. But if you tell me, something bad's going to happen if I don't accomplish this thing for whatever reason, for better or worse. So I had that fire burning inside me. And of course, I think both are useful, and my vision does drive me, but that was really helpful. I don't know if I drove that home enough, Les, but I just want to give some practical encouragement of what can people do if they just feel like, man, I'm not that kind of guy. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I think every man should own something. I think every man should do something. I think every man should have something. I think the moment we're in as human beings is very new, from the Industrial Revolution to now. Like, it's just normal to work for somebody else. It's normal. We're fish that don't know we're wet with some of these concepts. And and you feel a bit like an alien whenever you start to go, wait a second, could I do this differently? Could I at least, maybe I'm still a fish, but maybe I can at least swim in a different direction. I don't know if I did that
I would
justice.
ask you even to double down on that in terms of the context of pastoral ministry, because you talk about some paradigm shifts. We are in the middle of it right now. For years and years, we've all kind of known what it means to be in, quote unquote, the ministry as the full-time pastor, and all of the kind of traditions and expectations that come along with that. Well, I would contend that is getting that whole model is getting shattered, whether you like it or not. Like, to continue to stay in that and only that, I believe, 5-10 years from now is going to be the exception, not the norm. And so I would highly encourage our listeners, like, get out in front of this thing, figure out what it looks like, and embrace it for what it is, instead of bemoaning the fact that times are changing. Lean into it and see what adventure that could take you on, and how amazingly better a new model could be than what the old model has been. So,
Man,
like, double
I
down
was
on
talking
that.
I was talking to a guy the other day, and this is a guy who's very much stuck in like JOB kind of mindset. And he wasn't a pastor, but he had a ministry role and responsibility, and he's a music director at this college, and he was just complaining about his schedule. And I was trying to help him solve some stuff, and he's like, man, I couldn't, summertime's great, but then they own me again come the fall, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like 5-10 minutes, and I'm good at this. I'm gifted at it, but my offer stands to all of your listeners. Like, I'd love to help anybody brainstorm. But within a few minutes, he was a choir director. And I said, dude, what's to stop you from right now starting to reach out to the local high schools, and you have your own youth choir this summer? You charge $150 per head, per month, per student, and you have this super cool a cappella group, and it's on your schedule and it's on your timing, and you make X amount. And he was just like, oh my goodness, I could do that. But he's just stuck into like, it's summertime. This is my time off now. I have to go back and be the slave at the thing I don't want to do come the fall. I was like, there's nothing stopping you. He's like,
There
well,
you
I don't know how I would do that. I was like, put it on Facebook. Like, go to the choir, like print something, take 2 hours tonight with your wife at the kitchen table, and you'll have this thing built, dude. Like,
Yeah.
build the schedule. And he was excited, and he was like, I could do this. I was like, you should do this. You like it. Do it on your terms. You love music. So bring the joy back to it. And he was like, unlocked. I love helping people to have like, dude, what's in your hand?
Yeah, that's
I
good.
don't, it's like so many people, they need somebody to give them permission. And I love to be that guy who says, you have it.
Yeah, amen. That's so good. All right, so then let's tell your story of doing that very thing. Here you are, laid off, fired, whatever word you prefer, on from your your secular job, and it's like, I'm going all in. This is what God has put in my heart. This is what's in my hand. This is the gifting and the passion that I have. So how did you build what is now the family captain? You had kind of dabbled in it a few years prior. Now you're dusting that off. This is what I've got. I've got to build a business around this that feeds my family. Pick up the story there and tell us, how did you do it? How did you package it? Have you had different iterations of your business as it got going, or did you kind of set a course and it's still today what you set out to accomplish? Or because
Okay.
at Andre Pastors, we've had a lot of different kind of iterations as we've tried things that didn't work
Sure.
like we thought they would. So how did your story go?
Thankfully, I have stayed, mine hasn't changed at all. It stayed really precise from moment one. Now, I probably have the advantage though of a lot, maybe some 2018 work. So that was an iteration. We can't forget the 2018, like a 6-month email course. That definitely should be included.
Sure.
But then when I came back in, that's when I discovered like the coaching movement and, high ticket coaching, and the possibility that, you don't just have to like charge people $17 for an email thing, but you can help people move faster and accomplish a lot more, get a lot more fruit, and people are willing and want to invest into that. So I started to learn. That's where I started to come across that was even a possibility, and went, oh, that's a thought I didn't think before. So that world, that coaching world for me was what I was for this guy the other day. Hey man, have you thought this thought? No, I haven't. So that was an unlock. And that's when I knew, okay, I need to go that route. I want to work with people. I want to be paid well. And the other thing was, I had mastery, like, and I had fruit. So this wasn't like faking it on my way up. Like, the fruit is good. The fruit is real in the Clark household. And I really have mastery over the subject matter, not perfection, but mastery for sure, so that I can confidently help others. So, that's what I did. I mean, all I did was I started with my personal Facebook profile. literally, we're still finishing my website. Over 2 years in, I finally started a website like a month and a half ago. It should be launched in the next 30 days. I keep saying that. We'll see. So I've done all this without a website, but it was just my personal Facebook profile, and I just hijacked my profile and turned it professional. And so my banner, my picture, my description, and all of a sudden, if you came to my profile, like, and you just have to get over that, like, you just have to get over the fact that your high school friends are gonna be like, what's he think he's doing? Like,
Mm-hmm.
obeying God, fulfilling his calling,
Block,
feeding his family,
block,
yeah,
block 'em.
changing the world, helping men transform their families and their family cultures. Like, that's what I think I'm doing. So, and I just started posting content, like my thoughts and family leadership and sex and marriage and the things that are unique to my message, the things that make the family captain the family captain. And then I would just put out the call to action. Hey, I'm working with guys who want to level up and who want to do this, and reach out. Let's have a conversation. I was posting those same posts in Facebook groups, but that was it. My day one of work was get your message out. Like, I've got the best lemonade in the world. I've known that from day one. But if your lemonade stand is in the middle of the woods and you're all alone, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant. So you've got to give out lemonade samples so people can go, dude, this is the best lemonade I've ever had. And then other people start spreading the word. So that's what it was. It was a lot of that. It was a lot of, for me, my model was like getting it out on Facebook, guys reaching out to me through Messenger. Hey man, tell me more. What is this coaching thing you do? Do you have a website? No, I don't. Do you have a podcast? No, I don't. So I had some things that were not necessarily helping validate what I was doing, but still it was where I was at, and it got us to where we are today.
Hey, John Michael, how quickly into that story? I know pretty early on after I connected with you, I started seeing you do like a weekly Facebook live. I mean, it wasn't really a show. Maybe you called it a show, but it was basically you were creating content within your community. So how long did it take for you to start putting out that kind of content?
Well, if I could go back, I would have started the Facebook group immediately.
Yep.
But I just started my personal profile, and I didn't learn about even the idea to start a Facebook group around it until later. But when I started the Facebook group, I mean, that was maybe even a year in to the whole thing when I finally started the Facebook group. And that was an excellent, excellent move. And there's a whole science around like how to run a Facebook group, but it's not complicated. It's basically just keep posting valuable content that's very specific. Well, I want to reach everybody. Well, you're not going to reach everybody. My message is very polarizing. Like, the things that I say, you either go, oh my goodness, finally somebody said it, or you go, oh my goodness, I hate this guy. And I can live with that. And because of that, it draws the right people. And so that community has been able to grow. So if I could rewind, I would have done the Facebook group right away so that people have a place to gather rather than just friend me on Facebook and hope the algorithm shows them the stuff. But yes, going live every week in there and just talking about the stuff, hitting it from another angle, was a really powerful tool in helping guys get regular content as well. And then, so as I started off bringing in one-on-one clients, and I was just working exclusively with guys, but then that came to the place where it became unsustainable for me, but I also found it was more valuable for them. So I went to a group coaching model, and I found two things happen. I got more time back, and my clients got better results because the brotherhood was more profound and way more helpful than just Jon Michael with them one-on-one.
That's right.
So that's the model that we have now. We've got guys can come on board at any time. We work together for the 12 weeks. They're part of the fleet during that time, as we call it. And
do you limit the number of guys? Like if you had 25 guys all come to you today and want to sign up, is there room for 25 at the same time to jump in, or do you throttle that back, or not?
We're growing pretty aggressively right now. So yes, there is room, there's space for it, because we add calls, and I've built a team. So there's a team of 5, 6 people right now working with me in the family captain. And because of that, I'm making sure that everything's being taken care of. So we've been adding a lot more people lately, but because I've added teammates, everybody's being well served, and everybody still gets the most important access to me that they need.
Do you mind sharing? And if you don't want to share your price point, I know sometimes with coaching, you want to let people experience it before you share your numbers, but do you mind sharing what that cost is to the investment to jump into your 12-week course? And if so, I've got a few follow-up questions on that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell everybody this. I'll say it's a heck of a lot more than a cup of coffee. It's a heck of a lot less than a divorce. And in my opinion, it's a heck of a lot less than even mediocre. living. So I tell folks it's a 4-figure investment. And beyond that, I don't share with people what the number is, not to be weird about it.
Yep.
But the argument I always make is, bro, we know what a truck is going to cost because we know what a truck is worth and we didn't know what a truck can accomplish. The same is true for a million other things. But when you say the family captain, family leadership, and sex and marriage, he doesn't know what the fruit is until he and I have talked and I can give him honest assessment of here's what you can expect, brother. Now he
Right.
can
And
judge
just,
that so he doesn't just have the random number.
yeah, just for our audience to know, those of you that may not have a lot of experience around the coaching space, John Michael's not being like mysterious in that there's a reality. If as a coach you just throw out a number, there's many people that will just disconnect right there and go, I'm not paying this for that, because they haven't really tapped into the results that
They
are.
have no idea what that even is.
Yeah.
But they'll zoom in on like, wait, it's 12 weeks. Hang on, brother. It's irrelevant how long it is. If I tell you to stand on your head and pat your belly and it gets you the fruit, like who cares, right? We're after fruit. But I understand it, so I'm not pushy about it. But at the same time, I'm like, no, once we communicate, but that's why, John, that's why I give away so much free content.
Right.
Like there's nothing hidden. Like you want to change your life, join the Family Captain Facebook group, listen to the Family Captain podcast, and take action. The rest is history. And there's plenty there for you to actually do it. Plenty of guys have done it, and they don't have to pay me anything.
Yeah. No, and that's really the model is you give away your best content. You give it away for free. And then as you serve your community and serve your audience, they realize, man, if this person is willing to give that, and I think it's a counterintuitive mindset if you're not kind of trained in that, because the thought is, well, I don't want to give away all my good stuff. Then what would they pay me for? And it's the exact opposite. You give away your best stuff, and then you journey beside them as you help them apply that truth to their life, and and they flesh it out, walk it out. And I can say this too for our audience, just so they know, full disclosure, like I have gone through John Michael's 12-week course as one of his clients, and it's great stuff. I mean, it served me very well. And well, here's what I love about it, John Michael. You and I have talked about this in our own coaching conversations, and I know you know this, so I'm saying this more for our audience than for you, but like, regardless of whether you're showing up with your pastor hat on as the pastor of Salt Church that you planted here within the last 2 years, or you step into your Monday through Friday gig, which is the family captain, either way, John Michael is in ministry, no matter what he's doing. Like, it's ministry. And I would contend one pays way better than the other, right? Like one, you're doing ministry with people in a way that most pastors would love to be having that kind of impact in people's lives. And then when they realize the financial payoff that is there, when we just kind of repackage this, when we're willing to step out of that traditional pastoral role and go, well, what if I actually owned a business, a for-profit business that was serving people? Like, that's what I love about the model that you're doing. I mean, Les and I are building something similar, and we know many other people that are doing very similar things. And I love it because as pastors, they're still in ministry, but they're being paid far beyond what they ever thought possible in the old traditional model of what we've called pastoring and thought it looked like. So what say you to that?
I think well, what's the question exactly?
I don't know. I don't know if there was a question in there. It's more of a statement of just like, I love seeing
Just say
what you're
amen.
building. Yeah, just agree with me. That's all I'm asking.
Oh, John is always right. I mean,
No.
And
No,
guys,
it's ministry either
the
way.
language that I like to use, John, to help with the whole secular ministry jargon that we use is it just comes down to there's church employment and there's non-church employment, and it can all be ministry depending on you're being faithful to what God's told you to do. That is the distinction. One is church employment and a traditional church employment. One's just different.
Well,
right.
Ooh, John Michael, I've got to jump in with this because I'm looking at the clock, realizing we need to start heading to the runway here. But I wanted to ask you about this. You've got a live event. Here's a kind of a new iteration coming up on your business, I think, because you've got a live event planned for later this year at the time of this recording. Is it okay if we say that out loud, or is that still being kept in the dark?
No, it's good.
Okay. So tell us about that. Like, is there kind of a profit model around this, or is this just more of a big event to, what is your vision? What is your dream for this conference that you're planning this year?
Profit would be great, but I'm willing to lose on this thing. We don't know all of our speakers yet. There's one final speaker that I'm trying to land, and if I can, it's going to be Perfect. But so far we have Ryan Frederick, which is he and his wife Selena have Fierce Marriage, that ministry that they've had for a decade or more now. So looking forward to having him out there. We've got Pastor Dylan Davis. He's a pastor in the Nashville area. He's actually a Family Captain alumni as well. He's going to be speaking. Of course, I'll be speaking at the conference. But yeah, the Family Captain Conference is right outside of Nashville. It's going to be in September 14, 15, and 16. It's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And it's going to be an awesome gathering of guys who are coming to be encouraged, coming to be blessed. And my hope is that, yeah, I mean, we're able to spread the word, and there's going to be plenty of alumni there who are just going to be encouraged to see each other and meet each other finally in flesh, and rather than just on Zoom calls. But on top of that, I know there's going to be more men just exposed to that kind of culture. We need Christian men's conferences that actually treat Christian men like men and teach men how to lead with strength and love, because that's what I don't think I ever answered your question earlier about what is the family captain exactly.
Yeah.
And how it works. So but we need that, and men need masculine fellowship and masculine bonding, and they don't need to be apologizing for it, but they need to know, what does it look like? Everybody's afraid of the extremes, rightfully so. Everybody's afraid of the sinful, aggressive, tyrannical leader, as they should be. And everybody rebukes that sin, as they should, but they do not reject the other ditch, and they do not rebuke passivity. They do not rebuke it and the cowardice and the go along to get along and walking on eggshells. And if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy kind of perspective. And
Yeah.
that is also sinful wickedness that is to be rejected and rebuked. So in the Family Captain, I tell guys, John, as you know all the time, our target is to look and act like Jesus, the right thing at the right time. That's what a godly man is. He's what's needed. He's after God's will. He's not after his own ego. And yet he most definitely has the spine and the other body parts necessary to accomplish the will of God in his life and in the lives of those that he loves. So the Family Captain really exists to make family leadership look practical, because that was my frustration. What does
One
it
of the
look
cool
like?
things about your program too is it's really focused on you change you, man. It's not, hey, how do we change your wife? How do we manipulate your wife to get her to, do what you want her to do? It's no, you level up as a man, as a leader, as a Christ follower, and watch the fruit that comes from that. So
Be the greatest
stuff.
man your wife and kids have ever known.
Yeah.
It is a rare, 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 rare occasion where people rebel against and hate the greatest man that they've ever known. Well, my wife this, my wife that. Hey, man, we can't control her. So in the Family Captain, we don't take any of a, hey, let's do this together with your wife approach. We take a, you transform into your husband 1.0, let's go to husband 2.0. And this is not whipping boy. This is not the family butler. It's the Family Captain. And we do this in a way that's masculine. We do this in a way that's practical. We do this in a way that's fruitful. We help guys to throw the switch from, I got to clock in at work, I got to clock in at home, I got to clock in at church, I got to clock in everywhere, where they're just living as an employee of their life, to truly understand the high calling of family leadership. How awesome it really is when you get to when you rule well the garden that the Lord has put you in, Adam. Because when the Lord comes walking into the garden, he asks, where are you? And he's asking for the man. Well, he doesn't say who ate it first. He doesn't say, what did she do? So Eve's responsible for Eve in a large degree, and yet Adam has great influence. So we want to maximize that. And in the Family Captain, we make those things very practical. We don't just tell you, be a servant leader. We don't just tell you, love her like Christ loved the church, although we do, because that's good and biblical, but we flesh it out and we make it very specific. So we say, hey, brother, here's your scoreboard. Here's how to win. And we do it in a broad range of areas, which of course builds attraction as well, so that the marriage bed can be hot and wonderful and fruitful and beautiful.
Yeah. Two last questions for you, John Michael. First of all, if someone wanted to connect with you, either to learn more about the Family Captain program because they need it for themselves, or just to pick your brain more on how did you build this business, if there's more questions that they were wishing that we would have asked that we didn't, what's the best way for someone to reach out and connect with you?
For most of the people listening to this in the future, they can go to thefamilycaptain.com right away. It might not be up yet. But other than that, you can find everything on Facebook, The Family Captain, and you can find me. You can reach out personally, whatever's most convenient for you. You can send me an email, john.michael.clark@gmail.com. Don't put anything in there that you don't want my assistant reading, but you can reach out and then we can have a conversation and go from there. And and see how I can serve you and what would help you. And of course, if you just want to dip your toe in the water more and say, all right, what is more of this message? Let me hear more. Go listen to the podcast, and you can go judge for yourself and see what you think, see if it's a good fit.
Last question for you, John Michael. What would you say if you had just a minute to speak to a pastor that's sitting there today frustrated with where they are, knowing that there's something better for them around the corner, but just kind of struggling with that fear, that imposter syndrome, or all of the what ifs of what could go wrong if I do this, and you just had a few minutes to speak into their life and encourage them, what would you say to that pastor?
I would say, brother, the Lord has a path forward, period. We need to, before we talk about anything else, you need to know that there's no reason we have to be stuck. I might not know what the path is for you, but the Lord has one. So whenever I see misery, whenever I see frustration, whenever I see brokenness, when I see any of that, I just go, okay, it's right here in front of us. We just can't see it yet. Lord, show it to us. But I refuse to accept any theology or any perspective that would just say, no, like this is the season the Lord has me in. Nah, I suspect not. The Lord can grow me and mature me and grow me through his word. That's his ideal. Will he take what the enemy meant for evil? Will he take my stupidity and brokenness in life and bring resurrection? He most definitely will, because he specializes in resurrection. But I'm not going to glorify and build an altar out of my mess and go, oh, isn't it glorious? No, not at all. Humans living in misery, particularly Christians living without joy and living in frustration, because, as a pastor goes, so his church is going. As a man goes, so his family goes. So like you guys do, I want these men to be thriving. So I would say, brother, the Lord has a path forward. Know that. Okay, now what? Great, John Michael. The Lord has a path forward. What am I supposed to do about it? I would say if you're just totally stumped and stuck, you need to seek counsel of whether it's coaches like Jon and Les, or anybody, any wise mentors, encouragement, people who have a different perspective, though, people who can look in from the outside and say, wait a second, and ask you crazy questions like, what if you did this? Things that offend your sensibilities, to really make you view your scenario from a different lens, because you're stuck. You're thinking, well, I have to do this because I have to do this because I have to. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything, right? Well, no, but if I don't, fair enough. But you're choosing that. Yeah. And this line of challenging thinking, I think, can oftentimes be the thing that helps people get unlocked in their thinking. And then, of course, I'm assuming that this person's in prayer and already seeking the Lord through his word. But beyond that, just going back to that point I would say earlier, change who's influencing you and get other perspectives.
It's good. John Michael, I knew you would deliver the goods on this interview. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you. All the best as you continue to build the family captain and grow Salt Church and follow the Lord's will and leading in your life, man. We're cheering for you. So thanks for sharing with our guests. We're grateful to have you on today.
I love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, John Michael.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the Entre Pastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the Entre Pastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our Entre Pastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own Entre Pastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at entrepastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.